Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today we're going to be talking about the 15 books that I have read in May and the 3 that I think I'm going to finish by June 1st. The day that I am filming this is May 28th, I believe. And by the time this video comes out, I truly believe that I will finish these last 3 books, but I'm going to put those at the end of the video. So before we get started, don't forget to give this video a like. Please subscribe to the channel. Most people who watch my videos are not subscribed to my channel. It would really help me out. We talk about crochet, we talk about books, we talk about other hobby things, just life stuff. We do our makeup a lot on this channel, and I would love for you to be a part of all of that. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the little bell so that you never miss an upload from me. I upload every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So I know that I talked about this first book, which is The Invited by Jennifer McMahon. I talked about it in my last reading wrap-up, but I did finish this book in like early May, and so I'm just going to talk about it real quick again. So it's about Helen and Nate, who build a house in like the middle of nowhere, Vermont, because they yearn for a time without electricity because they want to cosplay being poor. Even though they know nothing of how to build a house or homestead. This was just okay, and I didn't necessarily find it scary, even though it's kind of considered like a horror thriller sort of book. If you are interested in getting into the horror genre, or you want something that's kind of like horror light, L-I-T-E, you should pick up this book. It wasn't terrible. It's got good reviews on Goodreads. I found it to be just okay. The next book I read was Poverty by America by Matthew Desmond. This was a wonderful nonfiction book. It explores poverty in the United States and actually gives ideas on how to solve the poverty crisis. It also shows a lot about how people in poverty are actually really hard workers and don't deserve this sort of treatment just because they are poor. I know there's a huge misconception that people on welfare are lazy, but Desmond brings up studies that show that this is just false. We have known this for a long time, but to have it be put in such a concise way is always helpful. Essentially, we live in a capitalist society where someone has to be in the poorest class, and the government is fine with that because the system works for most people. And the government has also weaponized welfare help to make others feel shame for accepting help when they need it. But when it's versed as other ways, so it'll be like, do people deserve welfare? Lots of people would be like, no. And then people would be like, oh, well, do people deserve to eat? Then the answer is like, yeah. So it's like, yeah, people think they deserve welfare. We have just like demonized the term welfare. Also, most people on welfare are white. So the misconception of welfare queens is a way to demonize single black mothers. Erasing History: How Fascists Rewrite the Past to Control the Future by Jason Stanley. This book mostly focuses on how education is manipulated to make fascist regimes look really good using textbooks and propaganda. This was a very timely book, and one of my biggest takeaways that like history textbooks are dog trash. They are absolutely awful. I know that a lot of us are aware of like right-wing influencers. Candace Owens, who is a prominent right-wing like grifter. She is a black woman who went on PragerU and made videos for their websites about how slavery really wasn't that bad, and you know, the slaves were like actually happy with the situation that was going on rather than what it actually was, which was human effing slavery. There's no way that you can make it sound good, but we just continuously whitewash history. And so this book talks a lot about how we have done that in the United States, how Mussolini did it in Italy, how Hitler did it in Nazi Germany, how places in India have done it. Like, it pulls on all of these different things and then relates it to also a United States lens, because a lot of our history is whitewashed. unfortunately. But it was very good. I need to read his other book, How Fascism Works. And I will say that if you are interested in reading this book, Erasing History, read How Fascism Works first, because there were definitely certain aspects that I was like, ugh, like I understand because I read like On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder, but I wish that I had read How Fascism Works by Jason Stanley first, because I really think this is a good companion to it. But that's not to say you have to. I'm just letting you know. Next is White Smoke by Tiffany D. Jackson. This was my favorite of the 2 haunted house novels that I read this month. This has been sitting on my Libby TBR for years, and I'm so glad I finally got to this book. Our main character, Marigold, and her family moved to a black neighborhood for her mother's art scholarship and program, and the house that they move into is like big haunted. I don't want to give too much away, so that like is all I'm going to say on the plot, but this book deals with a lot of things like gentrification, generational trauma, blending of families, and underage drug use. This is a young adult book, but I would say it's most appropriate for like 14 plus. It is characterized as horror, so there were some times where I was like, it was kind of scary at points, but I really, really enjoyed this book. A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. This book is crazy. So, A Room of One's Own is an essay that Virginia Woolf wrote as a keynote speaker at a women's college talking about women and fiction. That's what it was supposed to be, like a speech, an essay, if you will. And that's this novella thing that we have now, it's only like 69 pages, is the reason why essays don't need to be turned into novellas. You mean to tell me that Virginia Woolf had nothing else that we could have put in like an essay bind up? Like, ridiculous. Basically, the thesis of this is that women should have their own income and a room of their own if they want to write fiction. That's fine and great and wonderful. But did you know that the poor are not blessed with the complex mind that the rich are? And if you are born poor and are blessed with a complex mind, you are surely going to kill yourself one day. Woolf spends a lot of time talking about how a woman should write, which is, in her words, without anger, because only men are allowed to be angry, is kind of what I gleaned from the text. She praises Jane Austen for writing as a woman should, so, like, prim and proper and about ladylike things like romance or, you know, female friendship, right? But fails to realize that why so many women are angry, which, you know, I think people are well within their right to write whatever they want. So it is an opinion piece of a book. You know, I just don't think the opinions were very good, I guess. It was a bit disappointing, but I do realize why a lot of people like it. I'm sure that at the time it's like revolutionary, like, oh my god, a woman should have her own income. A woman needs a space of her own. And right, those things are great, but it is still, like, even in the foreword that I read, it's still like, hey, yeah, it's still kind of classist. She thinks that only people who, like, have money should be allowed to write, and that, like, she really criticizes Bronte a lot, and I'm not sure which Bronte she means. I think she means the author of Jane Eyre, which I can't remember which one that is. But basically she's like, I picked up the book, and I could feel the anger in which she wrote, and I'm just like, yeah, some women are angry, man. I don't know which, like, I think women have every right to be angry. Next is Word Slut, A Feminist Guide to Taking Back the English Language by Amanda Montell. It turns out that the study that everyone references about those who swear are true. We are, in fact, smarter. Montell brings up things that are used in female speech, i.e. hedging. And hedging is when people say like, such as, or, you know, at the end of sentences, and shows that men in fact use them too, but only women are socially persecuted for it, and how when women use it, it is a way to help build trust and empathy, and it's a way to connect with our audiences so that we don't come off as like cold or unfeeling. It also is a way to sort of soften the blow when we talk about more emotionally heavy things with other people. This book also said that we should stop correcting people's grammar or speech as a way to insult them because it's a lazy way to insult people. So I guess I need to come up with new ways to insult people, which is just a sad day for us all, isn't it? But I really liked this book. I think that it's really interesting. It's really crazy how kind of sexist our language is, and until it's pointed out to you, you don't think about it. And then once it's pointed out to you, then you can't stop thinking about it, unfortunately. But I did really like this book. Taming 7 by Chloe Walsh. Why in the world did everyone hate this book when it came out? I understand it to a certain extent, that this is supposed to be like Claire and Gibbs's love story, but it is that. They just don't have like toxicity going on. They just don't have as much as like the Lynch kids had going on. Gibbsy is dealing with his own shit, but Claire is one of the only people in the group who isn't super bogged down with a lot of trauma that we know of at this point in the series, and I think that's okay. And if you think that, you know, Claire is boring, I think you need to reevaluate how you think about Johnny Kavanagh then, honestly. I mean, I do think that Claire could have had a little bit more character development. Like, I think Johnny is like a super fleshed out character, but he also, you know, didn't have a whole lot going on trauma wise, if we're gonna say that like trauma is the interesting thing about these books, which I think it's a lot about like the characters and the relationships, and trauma just happens to be a huge factor of it. I think Claire exploring her guilt around being a good friend with Shannon's situation is interesting. Her dealing with how she can be friends with Lizzie and Gibbsy at the same time, and her exploring her sexuality. Those are fine things. If you want to say she wasn't like a compelling main character, that's like fine, but it is still like Claire and Gibbsy's story. And one thing that I think we didn't have to do in this book that maybe some people wanted more of, we didn't really have to establish Claire and Gibbsy as together as characters. The other books in the series have already done that for us. We have seen them. We got so much funny banter in this book. Like, there's a scene with Gibbsy and Claire and their kittens that I am absolutely going to turn into a duo piece for my students because it is hilarious. I'm just not sure what people were expecting when they opened up this book, because, you know, all we really knew was that, you know, Gibbsy doesn't swim, and we knew that him and Claire were absolutely on track to being a couple at some point. And I do think we got that. I mean, it doesn't tie itself up in a little bow, but I started releasing 10. The beginning is really good, but in the author's note, which praise Chloe Walsh for always putting those in there, because I think that that is an A+ thing for an author to do. She talks about how the next books in the series are not going to be like sequential, so like maybe after releasing 10 we'll have another Gibbsy and Claire book, or we'll have, you know, we're going to flesh out more, not so much focus on like the Lynch kids, because, you know, those duets, so good, but I don't think there's more to be said on those two couples, you know what I mean? Whereas I do think circulating, even if we just circulate around Claire, Gibbsy, Lizzie, Huey, and we do more of like the Biggs children, so we could do like that, that would be fine with me. I don't know what Chloe Walsh has going on in her head, but I really, really liked this book. I also feel like Chloe Walsh, her writing it just felt different in this book, and I really liked it. And even like the 30 or so pages I've read of releasing 10 are also very, very good, so I'm interested to see where things go from here. But I really, really liked this book. Next is The Liminal Zone by Junji Ito. So this is a Junji Ito short story collection, that I could not put down. This was one where Ito was able to craft short stories that were a bit longer. He explains in the afterword how he liked being able to play around with more space rather than being confined to filling out or shortening stories like how some magazines are. They're like, hey, you have 15 pages, write a story. And it's like, how do I write a story in 15 pages, or, you know, something like that. I really hope to see more short story collections from him like this. I really felt that these short stories were fully fleshed out ideas that were able to, you know, start, peak, and finish. They were also horrifying, as most of his stuff is. I only have one of these books from the library. I checked out volumes 1 through 4 of Heartstopper by Alice Osman. This is volume 4. Volumes 1 through 3 have already gone back to the library. I cannot believe I waited so long to read these. I know that everyone talks about how good they are, how much fun they are, and, you know, I believed people, but I just never really put it as a high priority in my, like, TBR or, you know, anything like that. But I was hanging out at the library a couple days ago. They had volumes 1 through 4, and I flew through the first 2 books. This series is so wholesome and a great depiction of young queer love. We follow characters Nick and Charlie. Nick is gay and out to the public, and Nick is not so sure in the first book. Their friendship and the beautiful love that flourishes between them, it's books like these that LGBTQ+ youth need to have exposure to. It makes me so sad that people think that anything queer is explicitly pornographic in nature, and I think that it's really disgusting when, you know, we have young adult heterosexual romances, and some of those have very explicit content, but nobody will bat an eye at those. These books are not, they have like no spice in them. Like, they have nothing at all. These books feel like a warm hug. It's coming of age, but it also touches on exploring sexuality, coming out to friends and family, and mental health issues. And I want to read everything. If Alice Oseman comes out and fleshes out more of the characters in the friend group that, you know, Charlie and Nick have, I would absolutely read them. I need to read volume 5. These are definitely ones that I think I would want to own at some point too. But I am glad that I checked out the library. Support your local library. A little shout out to the local library. Next is Ramina by Junji Ito. So the premise is a scientist discovers a new planet and names it after his daughter Ramina. Then he discovers that Ramina, the planet, is hurtling towards Earth at a rapid pace. That's all I'm gonna say, because, you know, I don't want to like spoil too much from there. This wasn't my favorite of Junji Ito's work, but I want to basically read all of his work, so, you know, we're gonna have a favorite and a non-favorite. I will say, so far, of everything I've read, Uzumaki, top. That is my favorite Junji Ito work. Liminal is my favorite of his short story collections. So that's where I'm at right now. Next was Censor by Junji Ito. This book is about the battle between light and dark, and it's explored through hair. This was definitely one of the weirdest books by Ito, but it's worth the read if you like Junji Ito's work. Again, not my favorite, but I think that his stuff is so interesting, and that's why I keep going back to it. I know that, you know, I was like, Ramina's not my favorite, this isn't my favorite. When you binge so much of somebody's backlog, not everything can be your favorite, you know? And that's not to say that these aren't good. They're great. All of them are. I just don't want to give too much away, because this is short. This isn't very long. So how much can I give away without spoiling too much? Because manga is also a very quick read, for me at least. And because it's more of like taking in the artwork and there's not as much, you know, words, it's so much easier to spoil things. It's kind of how some people with thrillers, they're like, I don't need to know anything. I just need to look at the cover and see who it's by, and I will decide whether or not to read it. And this one I finished today, Waste. One Woman's Fight Against America's Dirty Secret by Catherine Coleman Flowers. You want to know what the secret is? It tells you on the first page. it's about how so many of America's rural communities are living in third world conditions, mainly about the poor wastewater treatment. So basically, a lot of poor communities can't afford septic tanks, or they do pay for wastewater treatment, but sewage still backs up into their tubs and toilets and sinks. And what are they supposed to do? This is more memoir in nature than I originally thought. It is a pretty short read. It is like just 200 pages. I thought that it was really good, and it also talks about Flowers' activism and how she was an activist from a young age, how she bounced around jobs, and how she came to be where she is, and how she really became an advocate for how rural America has been forgotten in the pursuit of capital gain, essentially. I think that this is an important topic. I also really like the way that Flowers, this is, I would say, a very nonpartisan book. It's pretty clear that Flowers is more democratic, but she works with conservative senators and lawmakers, as they were some of the first ones to help reach out to her and get the problem, gain awareness and traction about the problem. And then she did start working with more Democratic lawmakers as she was able to make strides in the awareness of, everything that was going on. I also really liked how Flowers described her faith in this book. There are many churches in Lowndes County, Alabama, where a lot of this book takes place that also don't have working septic systems, and the pastors will, live near the church in some way, shape, or form, and they are also at risk of, being put in jail. I'm just going to read you where I tabbed here, because one thing that kind of drives me nuts about today's Christians, we'll call them, is the way in which they have so little empathy for people who are not like them. Flowers is a religious person. She doesn't say what denomination she is, and I would also not call this a religious book. She just mentions it because it is a memoir. This is when she is talking to a group of college students who are white and Christian, and she was worried about getting backlash because she is a black woman coming and talking about climate change and racism and all this stuff. I said my usual prayer and looked at my prepared text and opened my mouth to speak, but something unusual came over me. Instead of reading my speech, I said, I'm going to do something I usually do not do. I will put aside my prepared speech and instead speak to you from my Christian experience. My speech was titled America's Dirty Secret, Poverty and Parasites. The words flowed as I spoke about my youth in rural Lowndes County and my Christian experience. I talked about how faith propelled us to work for justice and requested us to be merciful to all. I spoke about civil rights and environmental justice. I told them about my thirst for righteousness, which sometimes called me to exercise my faith by walking to churches with outdoor toilets the first and third Sundays, or to hear seminars preached by circuit pastors on the second and fourth Sundays. I said our faith should compel us to work to overcome inequality in America, especially in rural communities. It is our Christian duty. And I think that really highlights what Christianity is all about. I really hate when people try to be like, you need to be Christian, you need to be Christian. But why? Her faith led her to wanting to help other people. And it's not just, I'll help you if you're my religion. It's she wanted to help people. Point blank, period. She wanted people to stop getting arrested for not being able to afford septic tanks, for things that they couldn't control. I thought that was a really important message, and I did give this 5 stars on both Goodreads and Fable. Is this the best book I've ever read? No. And so I gave it 5 stars because I know that higher ratings get more visibility for books. And I do think that more people should be reading this book. It only has about 1,000 reviews on Goodreads. So if you take anything from here today And I will be talking about some other books as well that I think that people should read. But I really do think like this is the least popular book that I have today with me, I'm pretty sure. So please, like, go to your Goodreads now and shelve it. I really do think that more people should be reading this book. So those are all the books that I have currently finished in May, but I do have 3 books that I am very, very, very confident that I will be finishing by Sunday, June 1st. So this first one is Deserter by Junji Ito. This is some of his earliest works, and you can really tell in the drawing style. It just comes off much more rudimentary, and these are also like ultra short. Like a lot of his short story collections have between like 4 to 7. This one has 12 in it. So these are pretty short. I've been like kind of reading 1 or 2 and then going, because it's a lot of whiplash in these books. But I really love Junji Ito's work because his concepts are just so interesting. They're just different. And I wouldn't say that I'm like scared and I'm staying up at night, I can't sleep, all this stuff, but they're compelling in a way that, I don't know, I want to start reading more horror books. Like I have other horror books in my like TBR collection, but it's not like Junji Ito. I don't know how to explain it. Next book is A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. And I am going to be so proud of myself when I do finish this book. It is 700 pages. I only have, I believe, around 4 hours left of the audiobook. And so I'm really wanting to get this finished. This has been such a trip for me, learning so many things that I did not know, that I was not taught in school. And, you know, it really makes me think about like our education system and the way that we teach history, because why did I learn the same stuff and the same dates over and over and over again when there were so many other things going on that clearly were documented for this man to find them and put them in this book? Why did I have to learn all of these things, and why did I learn them through a lens of like saviorism in a way? It just irks me. But I do think if you have any inkling of like wanting to learn more about United States history, if you grew up in the United States and you're just kind of curious, I do think this book is worth the read. I am listening to the audiobook, which is just easier for me. This book is really dense. It does read like a textbook, but I like the audiobook because it feels like I'm just in like a college history lecture. So that's been a lot easier for me to like absorb the information. But it is very, very, very good. Okay, so the last book is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. This is a nonfiction book that reads like fiction. It is so interesting. It chronicles the life of Henrietta Lacks and the HeLa cell line that was taken from her. She got cervical cancer. The doctor took a bit of her like tumor and sent it to a cell specialist who was like trying to make cells basically immortal, and he was only able to do it with Henrietta's cells that were then called the HeLa cells. If you are interested in medical science of any sort, or maybe just science in general, I do think that this book is very interesting. The HeLa cells helped develop the polio vaccine, helped discover HPV and vaccines for the HPV virus. It's so weird when you have like an acronym and then you're like, because it's human papillomavirus, so it's like virus, whatever. It also talks about her journey with meeting the family and trying to write this book, because Henrietta Lacks was a black woman and this Rebecca Skloot, who wrote this book, is a white woman, and like gaining the trust of the family and all that they've been through and how they weren't compensated and who has the right to your body parts once they're kind of like taken out of you. It's very interesting read, and I definitely will be finishing the audiobook either tonight or tomorrow probably. Yeah, so that is the 15 books that I read in May, and the 3 books that I will be finishing before May ends. Thank you so much for watching today. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!